So I'd like to start tonight's proceedings by asking a question of the audience, and that is, how many people are already decided who they're going to vote for? Can you raise your hands, just so we have a sense of, gosh, okay, so there's many undecided voters out there. That's very interesting, thank you. We are going to start with a question for all the candidates that was a tabled question, and that is, can a new government halt the climate and environmental crises? And Sarah, we'd like you to start us off, if you would, please.
I suppose that's appropriate. So a new government must make the climate and environmental crisis its top priority. If it does not do so, as pointed out by over 400 scientists in their open letter yesterday, it will place the prosperity and well-being of the British people at severe risk. 3/4 of British adult population is worried about climate change, a concern I have picked up strongly from the doorstep when I'm out canvassing. It's incredibly disappointing, not to say astonishing, that the other parties are paying so little attention to this fundamental threat to our future. The one thing the public can rely on is Green MPs pushing for real action on the climate and the environment to give everyone the real hope and the real change that is so desperately needed. We need to, firstly, stop all fossil fuel extraction projects, cancel recently issued fossil fuel licenses, and focus clearly on the actions needed to halt carbon emissions. Secondly, press for significant investment in a green economic transformation, which will be good not only for the environment, but also for the economy. And thirdly, urgently accelerate action to help ensure adaptation to climate change. Recent weather events and disasters have shown that climate change is happening now. I'm sure a lot of you have been caught in the deluge of rain recently, it's only just stopped this evening, and we know that these are going to have significant negative consequences. The climate and environmental crisis is global and cannot be halted by one country alone. Our new government must aim to lead by example, demonstrating that a just and fair transition is possible and ensuring that the necessary finance is generated by the wealthy for those who will struggle most to mitigate and adapt to the impending changes. Only the Green Party offers real hope and real change, I'm repeating myself now, for halting the climate and environmental crisis. If you go away with one message tonight, go away with that one. Thank you.
First of all, for the Workers' Party in Great Britain, we are really focusing on the environment. Mainly, me as oncologist, I can see the global warming and the pollution really affecting our patients, and more cancer we can see nowadays than before. I'm now struggling with the number of patients coming to my clinic because of what's happening around. So now what we need to do, we need to divert lots of these billions going abroad to sponsor wars and the NATO to here inside the country. We are really facing disaster. I agree completely about the fossil fuel, that we have to stop this crazy pollution program for digging here and there for the fossil fuel. I'm anti-fossil fuel. Number two, we need to stand for our global warming. We can see here, this is the land projected to be below annual flood level in 2050. We are sinking, basically. We can see my garden here in Cambridge is more muddy. It's not just because of the long, wet winter. It's also because of the sea level going up and up because of the pollution. If you do nothing and we keep funding the NATO, we are going to be in trouble. Yes, the city planning for another 150,000 new house by 2050. But where? The mud. A few months ago, I was trying to go to my hospital, Norwich Hospital, and I stuck in the traffic 4 hours to reach my hospital because of small flood. What about next year and the year after and the year after? We have to act now. We have to stop talking about, oh, we are struggling with the budget. There is a big budget there. We have to divert this budget to feed our poor kids. There's 4.3 million children in poverty. There is a disaster here we are facing. There's more cancer. We are facing pollution all over our city. So I spoke with one of COP28 members about the future of UK, not UAE, because the COP28 was back in December in UAE. I told him, one of the Sultan al-Jaber friends, what do you think about UK? He said, guys, you're in trouble. You have to act now. This is the reason why I'm standing for our city, for our country. Enough is enough. Just promises, and we are talking about, oh, we are doing well, we are doing more pollution, we have to clean the city. I will leave these pictures behind me. This is not, the city is sinking with rubbish. This morning, this is not the ideal. This is a Edington Road, you can watch it, you can go there and have a look to see how much rubbish there. The city full of weed, the city full of dirt. We need our river become more polluted. Our patients needs clean water as well. Thank you, Mia. But please, we have to act now. Thank you.
There's a simple answer to the question. We absolutely must tackle the crisis. We absolutely must. The big question is, can we? And I suspect virtually everyone in this room thinks this is really important. The problem is, we've got to convince lots of our fellow citizens. And that, I'm afraid, is not as easy as it sometimes seems. But when we look at the results of the European elections over the last few days, it's not particularly uplifting, because it seems that right across Europe, people are turning away from this issue when it absolutely they should be coming to it. So if you ask me, will we be able to do it? My commitment is absolute to trying to make it happen, but do not underestimate how hard this is, and also how much time has been lost in the last decade, frankly. There was a period when it looked as if, I'm not going to say anything too positive about Boris Johnson, but on climate issues, he was beginning to come in the right direction. Frankly, Rishi Sunak has turned back. We've got to move forward. And there's a lot can be said, I'll keep it brief. Two big things though, or one big thing and a smaller thing. The Labour's plans for Great British Energy are transformational. It is a huge, huge ambition to decarbonise our power sector by 2030. So much follows from it. Because you want to tackle those emissions coming from transport, of course we've got to electrify, but you've got to have the power to do it. And at the moment the problem is a real market failure, frankly. The number of projects I come across in my brief where people are saying, we've got all these great ideas but we cannot connect to the grid, is absolutely stuck. It's a huge bottleneck and it's not being resolved. Great British Energy can be part of that. It is astonishing that there are so many nationalised industries, nationalised companies around and about us doing offshore wind and so on, but not our countries, it's other countries, because this government has got an ideological obsession against state intervention. We need it here, we absolutely need it here. Won't say any more about it, just one final thing. If I'm becoming the Environment Minister, I will have the opportunity to make a real change in terms of nature crisis. Every year at the moment, the neonicotinoid pesticides are given approval by this government. If I'm the minister in a few months' time, that will finish an end to the killing pesticides that are doing so much harm to nature.
Thank you. So the question was, can a new government hold the climate and environmental crisis? I don't know if the person who controls the Friends of the Earth national Twitter is in the room, so I suppose it is possible. But if you are here, thank you so much for the lovely comments about the Lib Dem manifesto when it launched this week. In fact, it made Sir Ed Davey so happy, he disappeared off to Thorpe Park to celebrate for the day. So if you want to see a party leader do an interview about the manifesto on the teacups, it's on YouTube right now. I think in reality though, even if you did enact every detail of that manifesto to the utmost degree, in reality, my answer would have to be that sure it could, but I think no government can halt the crisis alone, and no government can do it as part of a two-party state. And that's because the change we need to see is so radical and it has to be systematic. Now, we here are all absolutely on board with that, but we know that some of the lifestyle changes that we'll need to ask people to make are simply not crowd-pleasing. Under First Past the Post, I just can't see the Tories, who chose to launch their manifesto for building roads at Silverstone, of all places, today, or indeed Labour, who are openly treading that tightrope to get into power, taking that risk. Now, I'm incredibly proud of the Liberal Democrat Manifesto, which will be, according to Friends of the Earth on Twitter, so it must be true, a tough act for Labour and the Conservatives follow. We propose to invest so that 90% of our energy will come from renewables by 2030, and to create a home energy upgrade programme to offer free insulation and heat pumps to people in low income households, which could make a really fundamental difference in the household in Cambridge. I can guarantee to you, however, that people will be objecting to those solar panels and all that ugly insulation at a Cambridge Planning Committee for years to come. And under first past the post, few governments are likely to take the bold steps needed because the electoral benefits are just too far away. To tackle the climate crisis, we first have to sort out the democratic crisis with a proportional representative system of government. Secondly and finally, no government can do this alone, and since we shot ourselves in the foot with Brexit, the UK has had very little influence on the world stage. The Liberal Democrats are the only party committed to a closer relationship with Europe so that we can work with our partners to put tackling climate change at the absolute forefront of our international development efforts. So to answer the question posed for us, I think yes it can, but probably not the Labour or Conservative one. Thank you.
Before I read out my reply, I'd like to put this question to the members of the audience. How many of you believe that the British government can solve the climate crisis? Hands up if you believe it. Anyone, any British government, don't worry about the colour of them. Okay, so the vast majority of you don't believe it, and the same goes for me. I don't believe it, and the reason is that it's beyond our power to stop the climate crisis here in the UK. Okay? We cannot force the rest of the world to do something just because we want them to do something. And in fact, the UK government, the UK establishment, does not seem to want to hold the climate crisis at all. We are members of the WTO, GATT, and we've relocated most of our consumer industries to other countries in the Far East, etc. This actually increases global emissions because the products are manufactured in countries which mostly use coal as their energy, and they mostly import their raw materials, and once they've produced the goods that are destined for our consumers, these have to be carried all the way across the world to us. So, this causes further damage to the environment. Climate change is a worldwide crisis. Stopping it is wishful thinking. We cannot dictate what happens worldwide. We've got 65 million people in this country. China and India have each more than 20 times as many people. Yeah? Does anyone here think that we can tell China, India, Brazil, Africa what to do or what not to do? They're just going to do whatever they want to do. Do I have a bit more time? Oh. So these countries and others like them want modern standards of living and consumerism like us. What can we do? We can forget about bombastic claims of changing the world climate crisis and focus on improving our environment. So I'll be very brief. Our environment will improve our lives. We want to live in a green and pleasant land, not wallow around in a festering garbage dump with poisoned air and polluted water. Any steps a future government takes should aim to improve our environment, our backyard, Great Britain. Let's convince people to consume less, reuse more, and respect the wonderful land they live in. And if we want to do our bit towards solving the global climate crisis, let's start by repatriating our industries here to this country, train a new generation of workers, pay them properly, and build clean energy schemes to power the lot at home. This is something we can change, something we can do, and who knows, it might even be an example for others to follow.
Sure. So the question was, can the next government halt the climate crisis? And I think the short answer, sadly, is no. No one government can solve the climate crisis. And I think it would be arrogant of us to think that an issue as massive as climate change could be solved by one government or indeed one nation. I think we can all acknowledge it's an issue of global significance and therefore needs to have a global response, with multiple governments, multiple nations working together with private enterprise to come up with solutions. And it's why I am proud of the record that this Conservative government and indeed previous Conservative governments have on that. When we look at what we're doing at home, we're the first G20 country to actually have our carbon emissions while still growing our economy. Now, of course, loads more needs to be done, but we need to acknowledge that is a big achievement. But on the global stage, as I said, is probably more important. We have been a leader in this space. If you look at the Paris Climate Accords, we were integral in getting that commitment to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees. When we hosted our own COP just a couple of years ago, and even Mr. Zeichner mentioned Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, was key in ensuring that many nations that wished to renege on that commitment didn't do so. And since 2019, this government have invested over £11 billion into international climate change projects. And we've been encouraging our international partners, and some of the biggest polluters, that they need to do more. That we need to take this more seriously, we need to reverse deforestation, we need to protect our natural environment, and we need to accelerate the global transition towards green and renewable energy. Now, one government can't do this, as I said, but multiple governments together can. And this Conservative government have a strong record over the last 14 years of doing that. We have a proven track record of delivering. We do. You might not like it, but we do. And ultimately, you have to judge it on delivery. We have done it over the last 14 years, and if we were to be elected again, we would continue to treat it as a top priority.